Everyone's getting let in. All right. Welcome, everyone, to Athens State's very first Alumni Voices event. My name is Denise Santos, and I have the privilege of serving as Director of Alumni Affairs. Thank you to everyone joining us on Zoom this evening. We're excited to have such a wonderful mix of students, faculty, staff, and alumni all gathered here to learn a little bit. Before we introduce our special guests, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a few people who helped make tonight possible. To Grayson Simmons, who is creating this amazing pop-up set for us, and also to our marketing and communications team who helped promote this inaugural event. We hope it is the first of many. And now it is my pleasure to turn things over to the Assistant Dean of the College of Business, Dr. Cindy Lovelace.
Thank you very much, and we want to welcome our guests here. It's always exciting for us here at Athens State University to see our graduates thriving out in the workplace and building upon the skills that they learned while they were here. We're especially proud to have our College of Business graduates, so that's a real honor for us as well. So welcome. I'm going to introduce our moderator for this evening, one of our faculty members in the College of Business, Dr. Elmer Ragas. Dr. Ragas is an assistant professor of marketing at Athens State University, where he also serves as program coordinator for our marketing and analytics program. His teaching and research focus on branding, consumer behavior, and marketing analytics, and he is passionate about helping students connect classroom concepts to real-world applications. Beyond teaching, Dr. Ragas is active in service, working to build bridges between Athens State students and the broader community. So Dr. Ragas, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Dr. Lovelace. So I'm really excited about tonight because we're going to get to do two things that I really value. That's first one is showcasing our alumni, and then the other one is connecting that back to our students. So with that said, let me read a little about you, Ashley. So here we go. Ashley Hargrove began her academic journey at Calhoun Community College before earning her bachelor's degree in business management with a minor in marketing at Athens State University. She later completed a master's degree in cybersecurity at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Today, Ashley is an actor, voiceover artist, writer, and producer, known for her roles in shows like Homicide Hunter, Unplanned Motherhood, and Unnerving, as well as films including Marriage Bites and Skate to Hell. She has also lent her voice to popular video games like AFK Journey and Lost Lands 10. Beyond acting, Ashley is the author of several novels, including In the Hands of a Vampire and Just a Bit of Christmas Miracle. With her diverse talents and passion for storytelling, Ashley continues to captivate audiences across film, games, and literature. So Ashley, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then next, I got more. Next, we have Sherry Lee. So I'll tell you a little bit about Sherry. Sherry Lee is the owner of GTK PR Agency, where she serves as a senior publicist and is also editor-in-chief of the upcoming magazine Legends. Since founding her agency in 2015, she has guided emerging talent through the entertainment industry with her work featured in publications such as The New Yorker, Vogue, and Bloomberg. Sherry holds degrees in engineering, project management, and journalism, and is currently pursuing a PhD in data science. She is passionate about integrity, fairness, and helping clients share their stories with the world. So everybody, we got Ashley and Sherry. So I'll turn over the mics to you both.
The cute little clicker. Sherry, if you'd like to start us off.
Sure. So we made a PowerPoint to kind of combine what we both do, marketing, which Ashley has done in independent films,
Oh, yeah.
which you also do. So why is marketing so important to the independent film?
I clicked right. For basically, one of the things I wanted to first put together from the PowerPoint that Sherry created for us is that marketing especially you got to start the learning early. And that was one of the very first things I learned when I came here, that even if you don't go into marketing as a career, marketing is used on whatever job you're in, no matter what, because you have to market yourself to those potential employers. And in the film industry, especially if it's independent, you won't have like the A-list celebrity style budget. So you definitely have to be able to market yourself. So one of the things with like Athens State, when I was here, I feel old, was 2011. I was working with Dr. Laura Kerner that helped me get a really good grip on marketing. And one of the things that it's not just, as we mentioned the PowerPoint, it's not just textbook learning. You have to be able to show you can apply it everywhere, because constantly everything's changing. The industry, like right now, is a lot of it's, changing states, locations, the cost for budgeting. You're even learning how to raise some of your own funds if you ever create your own films. And if you don't market, whether you're trying to raise the funds or just get your film out there, no one's going to find you. We used to do where you just basically popped your project on YouTube, you called it a day, that was it. Well, that's no longer the case anymore. You have so many different social media platforms now, and people also trying to get them to the streaming platforms, whether like Hulu, Tubi, Netflix, and a lot of those programs have closed where you either have to have a referral or you have to have like a huge network base. So being able to apply that, especially from what I learned from Athens State, and of course, my wonderful Sherry here that has been showing me a lot of stuff, helping as well, it definitely gives you a better edge to get out there. Because if you ever notice where people now are running like even Indiegogos, and a lot of them are bringing in $300,000, a lot of those they were showing us, if you don't network, those Indiegogos will just sit there and nothing's going to move. Because if you just plop it on your social media page and call it a day, who saw it? Pretty much just maybe 3 or 4 people, or if I'm lucky, one of my cats, maybe, So let's see. And forgive me, I'm still learning the clicker. So this is one part here as we put filmmaking challenges to show people where a lot of it, it's not just promotion, as we were mentioning about like the distributors, the audience. A lot of it changes. The genres, especially like with what they're looking for in films now, a lot of them are looking like, do you have followers? What are your skills? Can you even market yourself? And that was one of the biggest things I had to learn, was learning to market myself in the beginning. Because when I left college and before I was able to have more time with Sherry to learn from it, I had to market myself to the agencies, because I had to learn from scratch, like, okay, where do I go to find film work? Where do I go to do headshots? How do I get to the agencies? I started with like, I like to call it like a starter agency, where you get your foot in the door. And I did background originally, so that way it gave me an understanding what it was like in front of the cameras and knowing, how to take direction. And a lot of the agencies didn't even want to look at you if you didn't have a real resume. So at least showing I was able to present myself to them, the agency I'm with now, I had to audition for them. It was literally, you're just walking in, you're just like, hi, how's it going? And they don't know anything about you. You can look I call myself average looking. I know I'm not a drop dead gorgeous model, but I had to learn to market myself. So I had to create also like different characters that could stand out. Like Sherry's son Grayson, he's a good friend of mine. He learned to create these fun characters that made him stand out to people. Mine in the beginning was I was marketed as the college student appearance. I always was the assistant, the young, innocent little look. An example is we did a cattle call from the novitiate, where basically the agency or wherever you see it, they send you to this big room, and the director or the casting director's in there, and they literally are going down the line looking at each and one of you, just go like, nope, doesn't look it, nope, doesn't sound it. And you're either kicked out of the room or you're kept in there. And that was one of the ways we had to market. I had to make myself look as young, innocent, and as much as a young nun as I could. So that was definitely a different role for me to try there.
One of the things there that I know Sherry will be able to explain a little bit more, like the distributors and financial success. One thing I'll say on it before I let her on that part is to get those distributors' attention, you got to prove that you're not just sitting in the dark, not willing to showcase what you have. So Sherry, if you'd like to go on that part there.
Yeah, like Ashley was saying for filmmaking, once you decide you're going to do this film, you have to start then to do promotions. You have to do articles. You have to put it out, a web page. Then you have to build all your social media, and you can't stop. You've got to constantly do publications, because when these distributors come in to see you, or even if you get investors, they want to know that you're marketable and that they do buy into your film, they're going to get a return. So we have to start even before it starts filming, pretty much. And then I start building all these publications, news articles, press releases, anything that can get a hit on Google. So if someone goes out there and types in Ashley's name on Google, then there should be a list of things to show up. So if you don't have that, no one's going to invest in your film, and no one's going to want to distribute it either.
And it's the same, like if you're trying to also get well-known actors to the projects, a lot of them want to see that you can make the film go somewhere. That was one of the biggest things. Like when we worked on Marriage Bites, we had James DeVell from Independence Day that joined us, Robert Lassard and them. They've been in this a very long time. And just learning, bits and pieces from them as well is like, are you willing to show that you can get this out there? And also Marriage Bites, this one was a new spot for me, was I had some sponsors that I picked up. And one of them was I had to show them like, hey, this film could do something. One of them was a sunblock company. And since we had vampires in the film, I showed them, I was like, hey, here's some of the people that are playing vampires. And I managed to show them how it would connect to them. I didn't think they would respond, but surprisingly they did. And they ended up sponsoring for all of our sunblock for the film. So you'll see all good products everywhere. And also the same thing is if you ever want to use product placement, you can't just put like a vehicle in a film without like blurring out the logos. The same with any food and waters. One of the companies I reached, they allowed us permission to use Ring Pops, Push Pops, Kraft Mac and Cheese, Pop Chips, 7th Generation, because it was the same way. We showed them like, hey, this is, where your product could show up, what audience it could reach. And that was a good way for us to get also a little bit of notice from them as well, because some of them will also do cross advertisement with you sometimes and cross promotions. And that is one of the things a lot of people don't ever think about is those companies. Yes, it's not just the small ones, but even the big ones. They all have restrictions. They all have rules, but they also want to succeed with you. And the part, of course, as she put, is distribution is easy and marketing is hard. You got to get through, the marketing portion of it, or you won't be picked up for distribution. Tubi used to do a ton of open submissions, and they actually closed a lot of that off. So you either have to use like Film Hub, Indie Rights, or get referrals now. So part of that is showing that, hey, I can market myself. And that includes even like film posters that you make. If they know those posters are just that was one of the things we learned from marketing here was what product are you presenting to those people? So let's see. Okay. This is definitely one of the biggest parts is knowing your audience. Yes. So the first thing with film, whether you're making the project yourself or you're doing the acting yourself, is first off, when you choose your genre, right now you have to look at, okay, what is the top sellers? What sells? The biggest sellers I've heard right now, horror comedy has definitely been one of the biggest things. Drama doesn't sell as strong as it used to, but it's getting back as long as it has a good story that's different. But horror comedies become big because part of it is it's a story that it's not real to people, but they know they can get pulled into the fantasy story and see something crazy in a different creature. They got overwhelmed with all the slasher flicks and stuff, and horror comedy could be more subtle. So those that can't handle like pure horror, like my husband, sorry, he can handle something like that because it's very comedic the way it's done. So that's one of the audience we look at. And also, if you ever check streaming platforms, you can actually see like what are the top sellers right now? What is that people are looking at? Because a lot of the stuff doesn't go to just cable television anymore. The cable, it's still there, but because it's so high in cost, a lot of people go to streaming now. And that was definitely one of my things I did. Let's see here. Next one. The selling point here. This one I know both Sherry will also be able to jump on this one here. What makes your product unique? That was like one of the things we had to do with Marriage Bites. When I worked in the vampire script for it originally, I saw a friend that had done a picture of himself as a vampire. I didn't want the typical vampire story because you got so used to the retellings of like Dracula and everything. So we came up with the idea of, okay, let's keep some of the vampire norms, but let's also break a few of the social rules that are out there. You know, and decide, can a vampire actually look in a mirror? Will he appear? Where if he steps out into the sunlight, is he truly going to burst into flame? He might just crispy fry, you know, just a little or something. So we made it fun and different while still keeping some of the elements that people recognize, but just adding something different that stood out. And if we made the entire film enough about vampires, it made it a better selling point, we learned. Because it wasn't just, okay, we have everybody's a human turning to vampires. It's literally 75% of the film of the cast are already vampires. So now you're stuck just like, great, what type of vampire am I going to endure here? So this also, Sherry, on the unique part.
Yeah, it's hard to, there's so many stories out there on vampires. So what can you do different? It's kind of like that. You don't want to redo something that's already been done. So coming up with unique ideas. I mean, like Ashley was saying, horror sales. I mean, that's all. They're cheap to be made. It's really cheap to make a horror film. And so, you know, a lot of people wants to invest in it. They know they're going to get more of their money back. So yeah, but definitely something that's not been done before. And, you know, I was talking to my son the other day. He is an actor as well. And I said, oh, I had this idea about this. He said, Mom, that's already been done. I said, well, what about this idea? And I told him, and he said, the television series is over. It was done. I'm like, what can you do? I mean, like, how do you make it different to make people want to come see it or want to invest in it?
This is the biggest part. Yes, I am the worst when it comes to creating a website. So that's one reason why Sherry is like the ultimate for that. Is like she was saying, you've got to either be on social media, you've got to either have websites, web pages, because people are not going to just find your film so easily that they used to do, you know, where you see it in the newspapers growing up as a kid in the 90s. Yes, I'm that old. So we have to have it. And one of the things when I first started social media, I was one of the worst people ever with trying to run a social media page. I was terrible at it. I was like, yeah, okay. So we jump on and we say, hi. You got to be able to showcase your product where it's going to stand out and what parts of it are going to leap out at people. And the part with also with social media is making sure that your pages stay as clean as possible. It's like drama is great for films, but it's not great for your page. So that's one thing to always remember. The other part that Sherry's been helping me with is getting on to doing more of the interviews, because I used to be a complete deer in the headlights. Even though I've done a community choir here, I've done some theater, I did the beauty pageant years ago, I still would just be like this, like, are they looking? Are they looking? But when you get on camera for film, you become that character. So social media, like when we create the pages for the film, in a way, you kind of do the same for those because you want people to be able to follow along and understand them. The press kit there that she mentions, that's one of the biggest things you have to have for your distribution pitch there.
Mm-hmm. There's press kits and there's what we call EPKs, electronic press kits, and you have to build these pages on what is the film about, and especially who are the actors in the film, because that's another thing that these investors look at, because, you know, they want to know that people will go and watch it if you have a good actor in it or someone that's known, you know. And the first thing that you have to do is build a web page. You have to have your web page because when investors, they want to know they're not going to be scammed because there was so much of that going on during COVID. So they want to be able to go somewhere and look at a web page, see your press kit, and know that this is a real film.
And the other part, of course, is keeping up with updates for your projects because like she was saying earlier, you have to start the press early to get the ground attention. And a lot of times, you could be before production and you just don't have a whole lot yet to go. So you kind of try to do like maybe an article a month or something. And once you get production going, try to spread out your still shots you might be getting from behind the scenes. So that way it keeps the audience engaged and you're not just like, oh, I'll post one here and 6 months later you come back on. And because if you wait so long, it's going to lose the attention span of people. Editing can go anywhere from like a month to even a year or two. So you have to keep that going as long as you can. Emotional connections with trailers. Yes, this is one of the biggest things. I have a few friends that have done some work for like Hallmark and Lifetime. And one of their things with those trailers is your trailer is your selling point. If you're doing pitches, a lot of times they want literally like the first 30 seconds of what is going to snag their attention. The same if you write a script, that very first page, you have to be able to grab that audience right then. And if an investor or tripping on my word there, a distributor looks at your trailer and the first like 15 seconds, they're like falling asleep, you pretty much have killed your sale already. And it's not going to do much. And it's the same if you're also self-distribution, like some people use Film Hub or Indie Rights, and your trailer of those as well to get the foot traffic there to watch that. If people are hitting your trailer and they're watching it, they're just like, because I'm the same. If I'm on Hulu or like Amazon Prime or something, if your poster doesn't look attractive, and if it's very poorly made, or if your trailer is just got me just like, where's the excitement? I'm going to skip on to the next thing. And one of the things I recommend too, with those type is watch other people's trailers, watch low indie budget ones that have made a lot of money, and then look at the ones of today as well as blockbusters and compare them so you can see what are they doing in there to capture the audience. What is the very first thing they do? But one of the things we mentioned, about the platform optimization, it is definitely changed. People, if they're watching trailers on like TikTok now, they want boom, short, done. A lot of the attention span is 1 minute, I'm done, I'm over, moving on. YouTube, you can have them up to like 2 minutes, but just make sure it's going to grab your audience. Yes, here. Because one thing with YouTube too, if you ever go into your analytical part of it, it'll show you where the attention span actually drops off. So you can see like in one of them, and that's what we did on some comparisons, making some trailers for Carolina Mine and getting ready for Marriage Bites, is I can actually see like, okay, so they didn't like this spot here at 40 seconds. Okay, that they just disappeared for some reason. But I saw they jumped to 25 seconds. So you're able to go back and see that and actually help you with it. The industry exposure, this be for both of us on this one. One of the biggest things is you need to get involved. And whether it's with your college, attending events, that's one thing I did while I was here. I, got to the theater. I was doing some of the events I went to. Biggest thing right now, getting your project out, whether you have no budget, little budget, or a good budget. And even just meeting other people, because that's like one of the ways I've met other actors, especially when I was doing voiceover. I got to meet like in person Billy Weston as Futurama. I got to meet later on even Cheryl Chase that voices Angelica Pickles from Rugrats. D. Bradley Baker, he was Legends of the Hidden Temple. And some of the movies, I got to meet a ton that did a bunch of the 80s and 90s flicks in person. Like Vernon Wells was a fun one. Dana Roebuck. That she knows, getting to meet them in person, you get to connect with them and see what they do. Because one of the other ways that you get your project out there is connecting in person, not just the social media, but getting yourself to those events and understanding which festivals to enter. Some friends of mine that work in the industry as well, they were telling us like, the smaller festivals are good if you want to network a little bit, but a lot of those are not going to grab the investors anymore. So getting those into the bigger ones, that's where you're going to get the attention. yes, they're harder to get into, but start building up a little bit, because the more you get to that network base, the better chance you have. And one of the credibilities, I know Sherry would be able to on that one for like acquisitions.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger film festivals, and you need to go online and read what their criteria is, like what they're asking for filming. Like Sundance is one of the biggest, and it usually is in the end of January, and it runs for about 3 weeks or so. And then you have Tribeca in New York. Those are the ones that you really want to, or even a couple under there,
Austin
but
Film Fest.
Austin Film Festival, some of those, once you win some of those, then you can place, what is those things called? The
American Film Market was one of them.
American Film Market.
The Lorettes.
Lorettes, that's it. That's what I was thinking of. And then that grabs attention of these bigger distributions, to help get your film sold. And that's what you're ultimately trying to do.
And the other part, when you're entering festivals, also check with the distribution you want to get with, because some of them actually don't want you like premiering your project at the festivals before they get first grabs. Some of them want to be the first one to show your film. And like one of the companies that I'm working with for distribution coming up that is one of their requirements. One of them said absolutely they don't want any festivals to show. Like you can win an award, but it cannot premiere at their festival at all. Or you got to have I think it was like a 3-month gap or something between the showings.
And that's something that's changed too, because before COVID, all of these films were waiting until after they went through the film festivals, and then they would try to sell it to a distributor. Now you have to do it up front.
Oh, yeah.
You have to do it way before that time. Like when you're filming it, you got to already be emailing all these distribution places to find out who you can get, because sometimes they'll give you money, to help do that, like your investors do. And they can help you too with your PR. Yeah.
And next year in this one, some of the other ways, let's put like guerrilla tactics and direct engagement. These are some odd ones, but it's always changing. So between your social media, you can even do a billboard dirt cheap now. You can get some of them I've seen for like a month for, I think one of them was maybe 200 or 500. And you can even get some of the companies to sponsor you. So with those, I've seen some friends do that, and you just have to pick the correct area is the best way to put it. Get on as many podcasts as you can. That is one of the biggest things I do in between. Sherry doing a bunch of articles for us. She's fantastic at that. Is I get on as many podcasts as I can, whether they're small or they're big, because you never know what audience you're going to hit. My advice on those, when you do get on those, you can find a lot of those on Facebook, especially, and Instagram. There's all kinds of podcast groups and indie filmmaking groups as well that will recommend you. Is make sure you get in the correct podcast. Because there are some that only do just horror, or some that do comedy, or some that are slightly bigger budgets. And they'll be direct and honest with you. But one of the biggest things with that as well is share their podcast, even when you're not on it for that time period. Give one shout out for them, because it connects you to the next person and the next person. But one of the things too, with going into those groups online, don't set your expectations too high either, or too low. We saw somebody do that once where they were trying to put a multi-million-dollar project, or they were hoping to get to that. They were trying to put in a Facebook group, and they were expecting like people to donate $10 million right then. It was like, you're going to get some good donations, but don't expect like it to get 10 million or something unless you're very well known. But you can still definitely get some good donations. I know some of mine, I've seen one go up to 5,000, a couple thousand. I had some friends that got $20,000 donations. But start small, because every small donation, whether it's $1, $5 from those groups, it helps expand you, gets your reputation going. One of the other things too with putting guerrilla tactics, I kind of think like the IMDb Pro in a way is, because you get to really see deep in there the different special thanks and the producers, and you get to kind of learn from that. So that was one piece of it. The live streams, yes, those ones are definitely different. Live streams like this, yes, we get the deer in the headlights, but just be prepared when you go in. Don't go in without at least some sort of note, or your project's going to go like that, basically. The marketing, yes.
It is constant. Like what we were saying, you have to start even before you start filming. You know, the actors that you know that's going to be in there, you have to get their participation. And a lot of actors don't like to be on social media. Some don't, you know, and then you have to make sure that you have actors that does, because they're going to help you sell your film. And even during your film, when you're filming it, you have to keep up. You have to do articles every month.
I'm terrible at that.
She is. But you have to do them on the film. You have to do them on the actors. You have to keep that going, because the trending, you know, you have to make sure, like her film, Marriage Bites, is trending. Those hashtags are showing up, you know, and they're really, really hard. If anybody is looking for trending, you know, Google has a great one, and you can go every day. They change their trending every day, and you go there to see what they're trending. And I use a lot of those to try to get Marriage Bite trending, or some of the actors in it, or Ashley's name, hashtag Ashley Hargrove, you know, anything like that that you can get associated with that film. Because even after you have distributed and they will do PR for you, you still have to continuously do it, because where is it going to go streaming? You know, that's when you get your, usually a filmmaker doesn't make any money until like a year or two after the film has already been released. So you constantly have to do that.
And part of the reason for sometimes you'll see that year or two delay is part of it is your foot traffic. If you don't get your foot traffic right away, it's going to take time. And some of the distribution companies don't release the reports for either quarterly or 6 months, or even only once a year. So that means you could potentially be waiting an entire year before you get your, you know, first set of income from whatever project you've sold or you put up there yourself. And it's also the same if, like, when I get on a film project or her son gets on a project, like you see residuals, those can take sometimes months, or suddenly you'll get back to back to back residuals, and then suddenly it's quiet for 8 months and there's nothing. It just means like, or the amount went down. There just wasn't as much traffic. And every project out there is going to go through an up or down, or eventually some will kind of phase out, or they'll keep that audience forever, basically.
And if you have investors, they're going to expect to get their money back plus some. So if you don't constantly do marketing and make that, they're not going to want to invest in any more of your films.
And that's the biggest thing too with investors. As I've been getting to meet more and more of them, they're right now, it's money. It's money. What is going to bring in? How are they, like she said, how are they going to make their money back? Because your investors get paid back first, and then it works down the line from like your producers. And if anybody has a project attached to SAG, or if you promised a, not residual, but like a percent back to actors afterwards, sometimes you make those deals, and yourself, you may not see it for a while. But that is one of the biggest challenges, is you got to be prepared for that. And whenever you also create those contracts, sign them out, make sure everybody signs to a T, because that's one thing a lot of people do not realize in their distribution. And even myself, I didn't realize this when I first started. I did some small projects years ago where, you know, it was just everybody building up. We didn't know. You just sign a basic NDA, like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. Well, those forms are a little more tight nowadays, where it grants the full permission. It's the licensing fees you're going to be paying. Those companies want to see 100% from every crew member and actor that they have that full permission to use it, especially if you're using music. That is one of the biggest things that get people stuck. If you ever notice, clips of them might be hit with a copyright hit, like on YouTube, or I've seen it on Instagram, Facebook. It's because the person didn't get full permission. It happens. Or if it was their one, like a project I sold to a company, One of theirs was I had to go back to the original composer from like 5 years ago, reach out to him and get him to do an updated form for me and send it to them before they would release the project on their platform, or else we had to replace the music entirely because some of the ones that used to be open source, say like 10 years ago, not all of it's open source anymore. A lot of them doesn't offer that. So that is another problem. Ticket sales there is one of them. Theaters for a while were way down. They're getting better, but she mentioned earlier, COVID was a heavy hit on people, followed by the strikes. And then during that time also, a few friends of mine that did work with Hallmark, they were saying they were stuck with all these scripts and there was no funding to just make every single one because no one had been to the theaters for a while. And then the cost of theaters, the average family forward to a theater nowadays with food and tickets is about $100. That's about the average. So, and a lot of those theaters only get 50% back from those ticket sales. So they got to make up the cost somewhere. And one of them with like Sherry's help is how do I get, people for ticket sales coming up is the marketing. We put out articles she's been doing like Atlanta Wire, Cali Post, any article, like she said, that hits like a trending or a hashtag or shows up in the IMDb base or Wikipedia. Because a lot of those before you could just pop them up there, but they tighten that in that if it doesn't hit it, it's not going to share. It's not going to pop up there. The components here for, as we put it, is, it's your identity. What identity do you give for that project or yourself? Myself, like I said earlier, I used to be the college student in a lot of projects. That was what I was known for. Well, because I know that I'm now pushing 40, I hate to say it, I am pushing 40. So I had to learn to become different characters more and more. I ventured more into like villains or the crazy young mother now. I get to do more of those. So, and I even branched off into voiceovers. I started them about a year or two ago. I did like volunteer ones years ago, but I really jumped into about a year ago where you'll compete heavily. I think I did 782 auditions in voiceover. You'll get a good chunk of them, but it's very competitive, just like in the film industry. And part of the marketing is marketing yourself. So like even, learning marketing here. When I do voiceover and stuff, I have like templates I put together and then some that she'll send me where it shows potential clients like, okay, this is what I've done, or this is what I could do. What makes me stand out to be better than that other person? And anytime that you go through an audition too, that's one thing I want to add is just, even if you fail an audition, that doesn't mean you failed initially. You will learn from that audition what you may have done wrong or what you could improve. And one of the things that's happened for like her son and myself is, the client may not have wanted you for that project. Maybe you got beat out, but I got called in to do a different project for them because they still saw that I had something to offer them. And with the changing atmosphere, you have to constantly do that part. The social media part, as we said, you want to constantly just keep that up and just keep your pages as drama-free as possible, unless it's drama from the film itself. That's okay. Let's see, it's Boo. And so the trailers and posters, it's not clicking. There we go. But the last part of that is trailers and posters. So we talked about the trailers. Your poster, though, you got to sell it. Your poster, they want to see what makes it jump. So when we did the Marriage Bites, it's a pun on marriage and vampires. And if you look at the poster closely, you can see the guy right behind me actually has fangs on. So that's how we brought that in. We wanted to show that there's something different. Limiting marketing budget and digital campaigns is definitely showing.
There's not just Marriage Bites, but a lot of my other filmmakers who come to me and they have a very limited budget because they're trying to sell their film. So how can you help them sell it with almost no budget? And you have to come up with these new ideas, whether it is your digital campaigns. And I know that I heard Ashley talking about like these big billboards. Well, you can get some of these billboards except in Times Square. I'm just saying they're like 50,000 a week, Times Square is. But, your social media, is your biggest platform ever. If you can get all of your actors to buy into it so that they're doing stuff on TikTok, Instagram, those are your biggest ones. Facebook, not so much. Twitter is not even looked at hardly anymore. YouTube, anything that you can get on those 3 platforms and get people to watch you. You know, you can even get paid now for those.
Oh, yeah.
But it's having to work within their budget. And most of these budgets are almost nothing, you know. So you have to really sell these people to publications. Because, you know, after COVID happened, a lot of our staffers that worked in publications had to go freelance. Once they went freelance, then they started wanting to charge people to do publications. So I was like, I've got to figure out a way to not pay for publications. So that's when I kind of got into doing magazines. I asked, you know, if I could collaborate with them and be a contributor to their magazine. So then I started writing articles for the New York Weekly, the LA Weekly, you know, Harper Bazaar, and they published my writing. And, you know, I was pretty excited about that. So once I had that, then I could go to other magazines and do the same thing with them.
And the other part we mentioned earlier was getting yourself to the festivals where it's not just submitting a project, but actually like all the Comic Cons you see. There's some in Alabama as well, but actually go to those events, not just to meet other actors, but to participate in them yourself. There was a vampire one we did in Burbank back in February where, yes, I was a newbie to it, you know, but at least there I met other people. I met someone that ended up making one of our merchandise items for the film. And I got to meet other people that actually, you know, help talk about the film as well, because that's the other part. Word of mouth, it's not just the social media, it's also getting to those events and just participating and showing, you know, different things about the film and talking about them. And the conclusion. Oh, yes. If you don't have marketing, your project is not going to go anywhere. That is the biggest thing, whether it's marketing yourself, marketing your project, or a combination. Like I mentioned before, it used to be, yeah, you toss up on YouTube, you call it a day. Yes, YouTube is a very good platform that can still get your projects out. But a lot of that also now is very competitive. So that foot traffic gets narrowed in. So if you don't have marketing, even let's say you start a project and you want to raise funds through Seed and Spark, Indiegogo, or other platforms, you have to be able to market that as well. And like Sherry was mentioning, a lot of marketing, you can either try to pay for a lot of it, which yes, there are some marketing you will pay for. So be willing to put in a little bit of funds. You can learn to do some of it not too expensive. And the best part is it's tax deductible. If it's business related and you can show that, you can get that written off later, or at least get a nice little discount from it. But that's, yeah, if you don't have the marketing, a lot of those distribution companies, if they don't see something from you or yourself, and it's the same with like my agent, if I don't actually, you know, do something to make myself that helps market as well, yes, your agent's going to help market you a bit, but it's also your responsibility to find a way to get yourself out there. And that's like one thing with our headshots. Headshots get very expensive. And before, you can have bad ones where I know my first original ones, I kind of looked like this with the smile, where it's just like, I had a hard time getting a good smile. Oh, she remembers some of my older ones. Or they'd be kind of out of focus because you might not have been able to afford like the really good ones in the beginning. And that was one of the things with marketing yourself and your project is your picture was your selling point. Mm-hmm. So like she was saying, when you're pulling pictures from the projects you've been on or anything, they sell. And yes, a lot of people don't think about it, but even some of it for your film resumes, even some of the classes you've taken, or even marketing from college, they look at things like that. And if you decide not to go into film or anything, they're still going to look at things like that. It's your responsibility to be able to market yourself with your learning, whether you pay for it or you get something free. I still do a mix of where I take tutorials still. I still study classes. Her son still takes classes, even though he's been doing stuff for, did the hunting wives for Netflix, right? Mm-hmm. Even if they're doing that, they still are constantly trying to reinvent themselves. And like I said, when I realized I could no longer always play the 18-year-old college student, I had to reinvent myself. I had to find another way to stand out. And if there's some projects you want to get on, or you want to be able to showcase something, or if you do writing, like a lot of people are going into script writing or self-publishing. If you self-publish, there's nothing wrong with it. And I've done it myself at one point. You got to still market your self-publication. It's
And
not
nobody's
going
gonna
to
buy
go.
it.
And I think that's actually the whole part, right? Thanks. Question time.
Well, yeah, questions. I actually have prepared a few questions.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have to say, I teach marketing, and so everything you're saying, like, yes, yes. And I know, I'm taking notes from like, yes, everything that a lot of the things that you said are the kind of things that I'm trying to instill in our business and marketing students, especially. And so it's great to hear that, yeah, and for you to showcase that it doesn't happen by accident. Like, you got to do the work to stand out there, because there's a lot of competition for sure.
There is. And one of the crazy things I learned years ago here, and people would laugh at it, when I was taking marketing here with Dr. Laura Kerner, if I said it correctly. It's been, wow. One of the things she was talking to us about was color schemes. When you're color grading a film, guys, or you're making PowerPoint or a poster, your color scheme is what's going to stand out and attract people. If you ever go like into a store or restaurant, you notice there's certain colors on the walls.
That's your branding.
Okay, well, I do have a few questions, and then we'll let the audience ask their questions also. But I'm taking a lot of notes here, and like, because
It makes me feel good.
yeah, it's like yes, I'm gonna reiterate this. I want to go back to your time at Athens. So I know you've mentioned that's many years ago, but 2011 wasn't that long ago. And that was just yesterday.
Like it was.
But yeah, what'd you say?
I feel like it wasn't, but deep down I was like, yes, it was like 15 years ago.
It's okay. Yeah. So you graduated 2011. You did business management with a minor in marketing.
Okay.
Definitely, it sounds like that's paid off a lot. You're using a lot of
Okay.
what you've learned. So here's my question. What surprised you most about working in the entertainment industry compared to what you learned while you were in school?
Actually, I remember we answered that. Put my little notes just in case. So don't mind me if I did, Terry, but I had notes just in case for that part. But there's some good comparisons between it, because like in college, it's teaching you to be prepared that you're not always going to win everything, but it's your job to do the work. If you don't put in the work, you're not going to get there. And that's one of the things here that connects with it. And college also gives you the edge of creativity as well. It teaches you kind of to think outside the box sometimes. And that was one of the things I learned here, like when I even joined like the theater or the choir and stuff, is I had to learn to pull bits and pieces from both areas of it. Now, are there ever differences? Oh yeah, there's always going to be. Like one of the things is when I was doing the lessons, you're not always going to have a textbook with you when you're going out into it, but it teaches you the drive that you need to have. That is the biggest thing I tell people. No one else is going to do the work for you 100%. Yes. Are they going to assist you? Like when Sherry helps me with PR? Yes, you get assisted, but you still have to go to them and say, hey, this is what I have. This is what I want to do. Or they'll go like, okay, so here's where we go. So you pull that part together there.
It's constantly changing, and you have to constantly, watch and see what is being done now versus what you've learned to do.
Yeah.
Because it's constantly changing, and I'm like, I'm so burnt out sometimes,
Culture shock too.
It is, and it's like I can't keep up. That's how I feel sometimes, because you're constantly watching TikTok, you're constantly watching YouTube, you're looking at these movie trailers, you're to try to figure out how to do something different or use an idea that they've used and then kind of change it up. But it's constantly changing.
So it's what I'm hearing is, it sounds like while in college, like during your time here at Athens State, learn how to learn, right?
Yes.
Because okay, you learned your stuff back, 14 years ago, but and now, of course, many things are the same, but yet, things are changing, and you have to be flexible and stuff like that. You also mentioned something about failures or
Yes.
so
You,
yeah, let's
no one's ever perfect in college. All of us have had a bad grade at one point, or like an audition where, yes, I failed at plenty of auditions. But failure, you have to look at it as a learning experience. It doesn't mean that you just were, oh, so terrible. No, you still are learning from it. Because the other part too, you could be in an audition where you're competing with like 1,000 people or 10,000 people. It's the same in college when you're doing some of the work and presentations. You're technically, in a way, you're kind of competing with each other to get to that next job. And in the beginning, for me, with failures in auditions, yeah, in the beginning, I would cry. I admit it. I did. The first few auditions, if I didn't get it, I cried. I was like, oh no, they didn't want, what did I do? And I got to look back at some of my old auditions and I actually like learned from them. My original auditions, I was one of the worst of doing them because I didn't know anything about how to frame. I didn't know anything about lighting. I used to use a hallway with push pins in the wall and I put a phone right there. That was how I used to record. And I wouldn't get the readers when I needed them. And a lot of the auditions, I didn't realize too in the beginning, you weren't supposed to look at the camera. I didn't realize that. I didn't know. Every blue moon, they'll ask you to, like if you do a teleprompt work, they'll say, we want you to look. But yeah, that was one of my biggest blunders. Or I couldn't get like the lines memorized the way they need them, or I just get nervous on the camera. So that there, I learned from that experience, was like, okay, this is what I did wrong. So yes, I lost out because I did this wrong. Or I was telling them earlier where I was in an audition on the way out. I made an embarrassing moment by walking clear into a glass door. For them, they're noting, are you paying attention to everything around you? Because like when you get on a set, that's why I started with background work and reenactments. You learn to take direction and learn from them. One of the biggest things with mistakes I've seen is some people would also get a really big ego and say, well, they should have picked me. Okay, you say they should have, but to them, they didn't think the same thing. And you have to remember, it's not your project, it's their project. And just learn from it. Don't be afraid to make that mistake and failure. Like I said, I did over 782 voiceover auditions. You're not going to get all of them because they're not all looking for the same thing. Or the other part that her and I mentioned earlier is you may have failed one audition, but they may have saved you for another one. They may have spotted you like, oh yeah, here you go. You can do this. We realized you could do that. And the same she was saying about screen tests. Like you could do a great audition, but you just don't do well in the screen test. It happens. So like if I ever didn't do the greatest on an assignment for college, I had to learn, what did I do wrong? Was I not managing my time correctly? Was I not actually paying attention to the directions from the assignment all the way? What was it that I missed? And just learn from it and know that everybody else out there is just like you. They're not perfect, but it's about giving your best and just learning.
So really, it's not failure, right? It's a learning opportunity.
It's a learning opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to give the audience time to ask their questions, but I do have a question for you, Sherry. So, let's see. What stood out to you about Ashley when you first started working together?
The first time I met Ashley was on a mini TV series. It was called Unplanned Motherhood. And Ashley played one of the major roles. She was the best friend of the main character. And my son, Grayson, played one of the kids. He was very little at that time. That was one of his, I think that was his first.
When
It was
his
he was 9. He was 9 at that time.
8 or 9.
So that would have been about 13 years ago.
Yeah,
13
he's
years
21 now. So he met Ashley and she was great with him on set and helped him out, give him pointers because she had been doing it.
For a little bit learning. Don't look at the cameras, but we had to always tell the kids, don't look at the camera.
Don't look at the cameras. Yep. And so I really liked Ashley. I mean, she was very diverse. Like she could do something serious and then she could change it and be funny, or it could be even her facial expressions, that was another thing. And I could tell she was going to go somewhere, with her career. And I think it was just maybe a few years she started doing her own, like Unnerving. And then she pulled my son back in it because they work well together. And now, he's 21 years old and he thinks of her as a big sister. And she brings him in, even Marriage Bites. He was in that with her.
And it's just, and the other part too, to come off of that, is nothing builds overnight. Yes, there is that very small percentage that you've seen where they get the one role and boom, they're instant, or they sell the one project and everybody instantly knows them. But the one thing to remember is it doesn't always happen overnight for the majority of people. It really doesn't. So just don't stop. And I have two other questions I remember I saved here. One of them was about what advice do you have for students trying to learn more about the business aspects of a career in creative arts? A couple things with that one. Never stop learning. I don't care what age you are. There's a lady that's 92 and still doing gymnastics that I got to watch some of her stuff. Always keep learning. You can find some of the stuff for free. You may have to pay something. So that is one thing to be prepared for. You need to invest in yourself. If this is your career that you want to go for, you're going to have to put some money into it. You may not have to put expensive, but I've seen some people, they put in a good chunk. But just know, like, what can you get for free? What can you get for low cost? Can you trade a favor? Can you work with college students? There are some colleges that actually film stuff. Like we filmed a project with you guys before and stuff. So that was different things we learned. Remember what's tax deductible, keep an idea, and just don't blow all your money. I know, trust me, I was a college student before where you thought you had tons of money, and always going out to stuff. Try to save what you can and don't be afraid to put in the work for it. And another one that someone put for a question I saw was, where did you take acting lessons? How long did it take you to get your first part? There are some classes in Huntsville and there's a bunch online. I know Grayson did like master class and stuff. He did some stuff in LA. I did a lot of my classes in Tennessee. I would drive up on a weekend and I would take a course that goes for a couple hours and then I would just drive back home. Did stuff with like Regina Moore to learn the basics of how to properly audition, because after my first couple of really bad auditions, I needed proper training. And at that time, internet, was coming up, but I didn't always know where to look. I did not know a lot of people that were in the industry. So yes, I found some classes and I started learning the basics. And then once I learned the basics from there, I learned to just run with that and tweak it. I also went to, I think it was the National Actors School, where they have a bunch of actors that actually been in the industry for like 20 years that come in. One of them was what's his name? Alan Dicer. Yes, he runs a school up there. I attended some of his classes because he offers a specialty classes that pop up, does like improv studies. So I got to do some studies with Sean Whalen that did People Under Stairs and Twister to learn a little bit of that. Some of the classes I also took with, I think it's Amy McMullen, where she shows you several things as well of what is the industry looking for, not just like in genre and everything, but what do they want from the auditions or when you're delivering lines? Or one of the hardest parts, when people may have a fantastic audition, but when they get to the set, they could be complete deer in headlights. Yes, my first few things, I was nervous. Like I started basic background, like I said, so I can learn direction and learn, don't look at that camera. Don't walk over to whenever they tell you, you learn, what's group 1, group 2, or if they call them A, B, you learn the differences between, who's grip, who's gaffer, who's like AD directors first, second. You need to learn those things. And like learning just basic terms, that's one of the other parts. And I remember one actor, the poor thing got so nervous in one of our shots where she was supposed to wipe a counter, did fantastic in rehearsals, but the minute the camera hit her, she was like this. It was like watching that spot from Star Wars, where you saw him with a push broom and it wasn't touching the ground. It's like that. You don't know if you're going to panic. And when I first had to be in front of a camera, yes, I kept trying to look at that camera because I was so used to going like, well, wait a minute, if we do, pictures, we're supposed to always look dead in them. It's different than the film industry. The first parts though, like I would say like background and reenactments you could get very quickly because those are everywhere and it's a good place to start. So I got those probably within the first few months, and the web series was pretty quick. When I took a break though to go back to college for a while because I wanted to actually try cybersecurity for a bit, I'd gotten sick for a little bit, so I was like, okay, I'll go back into this. And then I missed it too much, so I came back. And of course, that's where Sherry helped me get back as much as I could. And I started getting fairly quickly, especially when I found some things of my own, but I also teamed up with a good agent. And by that time, I actually knew how to get through auditions, and you learned how to memorize lines, or as I say, not just memorize them, but actually know the lines. Because when you're delivering your lines in an audition, you're only doing pieces of it. But when you get on set, it's a totally different thing.
All right. So, are there any questions from the audience? Feel free to unmute your mic or type it in the chat.
I'm quiet. I know there's some there.
While we're waiting, I want to say, thanks for taking the time to tell us your story and showing us marketing in action.
Oh, now they're all popping up.
Okay.
What would you recommend for
Oh, there we go.
someone who's interested in getting into voiceover? The first few things with voiceover, one of the things I did is I went to events so that way I could meet some of the voice actors and actually learn a little bit from them in person, because some of them love to actually talk about their voiceover work. They really do. D. Bradley Baker, he's got a website, and if you ever look him up and look for his website, he put tons of tutorials on his page, and he's been doing voiceovers for 30 something years now, something like that. So he puts up a ton of them. I also joined on Facebook a group called the Voiceover Community, because what that community does is they actually talk to you about your equipment. If you're starting from home, they show you, what is some good equipment you can start out with, because yes, equipment can get expensive, but I actually, I have one set that was only like 40, $50 that started with basic. And then I have another one where once I started doing enough voiceovers, a friend of mine actually gave me a good set. It runs about $300, but it's really good tax deduction. And not just with your agents to find them. You can find them in casting calls on the Facebook groups, Actors Access, Backstage. The other part for that as well with your voiceover, if you don't have anything yet, or you can't, you haven't started even on volunteer projects, one of the biggest things I was taught to do was create a sample reel just of yourself. Find some different monologues that you can to demonstrate the voices, because not every voiceover wants like, oh, I'm a different type of person or something, or hi. Sometimes they want just your voice. So you want to be able to give that little bit for them to hear. And that was one way I did with that part. But yeah, definitely check out D. Bradley Baker's site. And there's a couple new ones popping up recently. I think Amy Long had another one that was where she talks about voiceovers as well. But I definitely recommend joining the voiceover community on Facebook. It's free to join. And definitely look up D. Bradley Baker. He played, I think if I say correctly, Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple. And he's done a bunch of the Star Wars cartoons recently. And you can also find him and Cheryl Chase and Billy West and them. And they love to, like I said, they love to give voiceover advice. But a lot of times, it's the same thing. It's like network, study, and don't be afraid to join those groups. They'll drive you nuts sometimes. The residuals. This can be both Sherry and on it. Residuals, it depends on your project. A lot of them will come from SAG projects. And basically what it does is the amount of times that film or TV show is shown, you could have like a certain percent that comes to you, and you'll get that every so often. And some of them will get them for the rest of their life. Like an example is Seinfeld. They're still getting residuals as long as there's foot traffic to those projects. You'll get them. A friend of mine, he gets 48 different residual checks a year from projects he's been on. Now, yes, some of them could be just pennies if the traffic's dropped off, but then there could be some that be thousands of dollars. And that's where a lot of people actually get some of their acting income from, especially when like COVID hit and strikes hit and stuff, the industry went down. Now, if it's indie flicks, it's going to depend on what deal those companies made with you or that person. So some of those, you may not get them that way. But if you sell your project yourself, you can actually still own a large chunk of your project and you collect that from the company, and they'll average anywhere from like, quarterly or every 6 months. And I think the worst case scenario was once a year. I think I've seen that. Because I know Grayson, he's still getting residuals from Crash from years back.
Yeah, he still gets residuals from Daddy's home. And that was, well, what year was that in?
Long time ago.
2009 or 10? I can't remember.
The maximizing product placement efforts. Yes, that one, I had to learn a lot of that on my own. The way I did that is I first pulled a research list. Google became my best buddy, basically. Google is going to be your friend. Basically, I started with searches like, okay, free product placement or what companies allow you to use their products. And I also looked at different movies and TV shows out there to see what products pop up the most in those things. So I was like, okay, they use, say, Apple products. How do they pop up? So if you ever go to Apple, you can actually use their phones and projects, but the key to those is they cannot be shown in a negative light. So if you use it in a radar project or her project or some crazy drama, you have to have their permission then. One of the original ones I wanted was Doritos, actually, but they have a very, very tight clause in those. They're a great company, though, if you reach out to them, but you'll have to check through like their marketing departments to reach them. But like the ones for using Kraft mac and cheese and ring pops, the company that runs them, I thought they were just running ring pops. We have a running joke in the film of why we use ring pops with vampires. And so when I reached out to them, I found out they were under Bazooka Gum Company. Well, Bazooka also runs like 30 different products. They run everything from Caterpillar tractors to Modelo beer, Kraft mac and cheese, pop chips, you name it. Even Bagel Bites was on their list. And when I finally reached their marketing department, they directed me to them. They're like, okay, this is how this will work with their company. They will ask for your script. They will ask what scenes you're wanting. And then they'll go like, okay, what products do you want to have? And then they'll either tell you yes or no to those products. The only strict requirement they had was like 7th generation soap could only be used in a bathroom shot. It could not be in the kitchen. Don't know why. I just knew that was their requirement. But yeah, so product placement, it was definitely a learning experience. If I could write a book like you mentioned there, I probably need to give it a shot. I know I've been thinking about trying to make a presentation or a little class on it, how I got them. But the sunblock company, that was one of them we got, all good products. I actually I pulled up as many sunblock companies as I possibly could. I then checked okay, who shows up in the most movies, or I try to find companies that has good traction somewhere, but you may not see them everywhere because you're not gonna be able to get everybody. It's just not going to happen. And just remember, any product you use, have their permission. That's the biggest thing. If you don't have their permission to use them, you better turn that product around or they can actually sue you later. And I've seen that happen where some people got in trouble for that. So that's one thing I tell people. And the other part of product placement too, when you reach out to them, don't go in it blind and just go like, oh, I don't know. What do you have to offer? No, know exactly what products you want to use from them, what you're going to do with them, because they don't have time to shift through emails and phone calls back to back of you going like, oh, maybe I could use it here. No, like when I actually reached out to the one about the ring pops, I was very specific with them. I was like, this is where I want to use it. This is how I think it could use. And then I also said how it benefits their company. That's the other key with product placement. What is going to benefit that company versus just your project? If it benefits them, then it can benefit you. Like to know what platforms you use to create a website. I'm going all Sherry on that one.
A lot of people like to use Wix. I don't. And the reason I don't is because it can be very expensive. And a lot of your filmmakers don't have the kind of money to pay for Wix every single month. What I like to do is I like to go and go to like GoDaddy or something to get your domain. And then I go and find a hosting company. And sometimes these hosting companies will let you do as many websites as you want. And they charge you like $60 a year. And that's where you're going to save money. But you have to know how to build it, like using WordPress. And that can save a lot of money. If you know how to use WordPress and you can host it, I mean, after that project's done, you can close it and you still got, I mean, I can do 100 web pages, with one that I host with.
And the other part Sherry mentioned earlier too is if you don't have a web page, then utilize the crud out of social media pages like our films. Like even if they don't have a humongous traction, create a separate page because you can branch off from your own social media page and make one for your whether it's your book or maybe it's something even you're doing an event for the college or maybe your own film. Because if you don't do that, like she was saying earlier, it's not going to go very far. So don't be afraid to utilize, everything you can on web pages, websites. They're free stuff, or like you said, the one that charges like $60 a year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad fee. I think we got all the questions. I think.
Yep, looks like it. So I know we scheduled for an hour, so we're kind of over that time. But really, if there's any other questions, feel free to unmute your mic. But otherwise, I was starting to say, thank you for sharing your insight, your experience. It's awesome, like hearing about marketing in action in your field, and we got a little taste of your voiceover also. So those couple of different voices. So.
Or if you go the very formal that a lot of them love in PSAs. So today it's this is how we're going to explain this to you. Just watch very carefully. By the way, you can make a killer in doing industrials for companies. They love those.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, that concludes, tonight's inaugural launch of Alumni Voices. So thank you.
And thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.